Well, you know what they say. Before you go live, forget to brew coffee and bring a dead vape. Let's see here. All right, I want to take you guys down on a little trip down memory lane here, and I really don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm just free-forming this, but hopefully it'll be a way to prepare for the composition of my book, which will have the same name as the stream you're watching, K-Pack Pioneers. Because the possibility is quite high that this is going to be a multi-part thing, and we'll see what happens and how it goes. I'm going to start early here. I'm going to start way back in the beginning. A little disclaimer for you guys is that everything I'm going to tell you guys about, everything we're going to be talking about today happened basically between the years of 2013 and 2017, and because of that, everything described is going to be well beyond the statute of limitations of the crimes. And I remember, long before that had happened, that passage of time, I was in a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. I always thought that one day the feds were going to come up and raid me, and I dealt with that anxiety for a long time, for years, really, 5 years, basically. But they didn't, and I'll never forget the time that that passed, and it became a real probability, a real attainable concept that I would be able to write a book about everything that happened. A lot of you guys know me because we talk a lot of true crime on this channel, and sometimes I refer to my criminal past as a way to provide what I believe to be fairly accurate commentary on how and why crimes occur, how people get away with crime, and how crime affects the spiritual development of a growing human being. And I think it took a lot of years before I felt like I was going to be ready to tell this story, both as a book or in the format that hopefully this little series is going to be able to tackle here. A lot of the people from this story are dead now, and so there's a lot of it's a heavy story. Everything I'm going to tell you guys is some heavy shit, but it took a long time to not only to be able to recount, first of all, to be able to, wait a minute, we have a drop, okay. First of all, to be able to legally recount the story, because, of course, if I told you guys this stuff in 2019, I'd be under arrest. And that's not the case now, so we can dive into it. And then maybe give the viewers some insight into what happened to me when I was younger. What I did, what I brought upon myself, what God allowed me to experience, hopefully with the intention of building and developing a strong or insightful or wise human being. And so hopefully that was God's intention for what happened. I can't say for sure, but I do know what I've learned so far. All that aside, this stream is dedicated to Jacob McKelvey, John Malik Carpenter, Joey Jeran, and anyone else that, as they come up, as their names come up, Hunter Osborne, I'll remember, and then I can always give them their tribute in this. I had a lot of really powerful, really impactful, and really meaningful people to me at a young age that aren't here anymore. And a lot of it just unfolded in, like, I don't know why Doobie Snacks is dead or why drama's dead and all that, but I certainly don't have any element of survivor's guilt. What I do have is strong lessons, and I hope that those individuals are at a peace now. And so, in whatever way that means, whatever you believe in. I'm going to start way back, guys, because I think it's important to cover everything. I think that that as we go down this story and this trajectory of events that happened, that I can convey the right messages to people. I see all these kids that, and it's gotten better in recent years. I think that I've seen a lot less glorification of crime online, or on television and in the culture. I think a lot of those sentiments are probably on the decline now. Thank God. But there's nobody, as far as my own actions and my own decisions, I take full responsibility, kind of, not in a bad way, just is. And actually, I'm really grateful to have experienced a lot of these things and gotten to come out the other side and talk about this with people, because I see all the time on television, in the movies and in the music, this like glorification and this just really inaccurate portrayal of drug crime. Really, it's laughable, honestly. I see things like on Netflix, they have this show called like How to Sell Drugs Online or something, and how to make money selling drugs online and fast or something, which is just the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. And I don't harbor any resentments, but if you're the creator of that show, you're a complete clown in my eyes. So, okay, let's get started. So, like I said, start at the beginning, and I can pretty much tell you exactly when my life of crime started. I had gotten really interested in the Iraq invasion of 2003. I was researching that from a historical perspective, and at this time I was really just a nerdy, space travel enthusiast and war history enthusiast, young kid. I was 16 years old when I started this little project, and I don't know how I stumbled upon it. It must have been on my Facebook news feed or something, and man, I remember all of this so specifically like it's yesterday. Exactly what anonymous, what claims were being made in the name of anonymous that got me pulled in. But my introduction to crime was cybercrime. And this was 2012. It was December of 2012. The Westboro Baptist Church had announced that they were going to picket the funerals of the dead kids of Sandy Hook. There was a shooting there, as many of you know. I can't remember how many were killed, but it was quite huge and tragic. And the Westboro Baptist Church said that they were going to picket the funerals of the children. You know how they would go on God hates fags and all this stuff that they would say. Just insane shit. Personally, I don't believe God hates anything. But I do think that God is objective truth in many ways. I don't think that that sign is ridiculous. Anyway, so I had seen this video released by quote-unquote anonymous, and they said that they were going to conduct a campaign of cyber warfare, essentially, against the Westboro Baptist Church. And so, researching the Iraq War and spurred into action by this video that I'd seen, and they had purple clouds and this ominous voiceover with this dramatic music and everything. I was just completely captivated, and I was only 16, and so at 16 you're full of whatever they call piss and vinegar and stuff. And I wanted to get involved really badly. I didn't know how to get involved, but I wanted to get involved. So I don't remember how I found a non-ops IRC or irc.anonops.com, but I found it, and I guess maybe there was an non-ops website back then. I'm not sure. And I basically released this video where I was emulating George W. Bush, and I said, this is a message for the Westboro Baptist Church that you have 48 hours to remove your websites and remove your claims, and if you don't, then we're going to conduct cyber warfare against you. And I was right there on video, just like this type of a thing, and was really motivated to get involved, so got into non-ops and started talking to these computer hackers. And so I didn't know anything about computer hacking. I had no idea what that was, but I was really wound up, and I was talking to people and telling them. Now, I had logged into IRC.non-ops without a VPN, without a Tor, anything, just naked IP address. And I was telling people, well, we should hack their websites, we should steal their credit cards, we should use them for, fraudulent credit card purposes, like all this crazy shit that I didn't know how to do. At this time, this December of 2012, so 3 months prior, disgraced anonymous activist Barrett Brown had been raided by the FBI for some claims that he made on the internet. And all of us had seen the video by this time. At least everybody in and on ops, and I remember seeing Barrett Brown was on this tiny chat. They're all on the videos and everything, and he's talking, and all of a sudden you hear, FBI, get on the ground, and they come in, raid him, tackle him, and do all this crazy shit. So that was fresh on everyone's mind. It had only happened like 3 months prior. I was telling people in this IRC network, well, let's go hack the Westboro Baptist Church. Let's go fuck them up for what they're saying about these kids. And isn't that a cool sound? And somebody PM'd me, and I don't remember who it was. I think his name was Nish, N-S-H. I'm not sure if he's still alive or who he was. That's another thing about Anonymous. A lot of the people that I'm going to talk to you about with Anonymous, I don't know who they are. And I don't know what became of them. But this guy messaged me, and he said, hey man, I hope you're using like a VPN. I hope you're using Tor because, or are you on the Tor leaf, or are you have a VPN, because everything that you just said is like highly federally illegal. So I got paranoid. I was scared. I was 16. I logged out of this IRC network. And I remember going and taking a shower the whole time. This is like 15 minutes after I had said all this stuff on Anonops. I was in there, and I was really, really afraid and nervous for the first time in my life. And this is going to become a recurring and eventually a quite prominent and ever-present theme that eventually you become quite desensitized to. But I remember in the shower, and I thought the FBI was going to come knock the door down like within the next 10 minutes. I was just terrified. Well, that never happened. So I wasn't scared straight or anything, but I was I just vowed to take better security measures about doing this bullshit. So as the next couple months went on, I started getting wrapped up in Anonymous. Well, January of 2013 happened, and Anonymous hit the front pages of everything because they had just launched Operation Last Resort, and in response to the suicide of Aaron Schwartz, creator of Reddit, they vowed to target the federal government. And they hacked the homepage of the United States Sentencing Commission, USSC.gov, put an anonymous banner up there. No fucking clue how they did that still to this day. I think I met a couple of the people who were involved. One of them was this, and all of these people were eventually flipped, as far as I know, by the feds to become informants. Well, USSC, or the Operation Last Resort, just really invigorated this movement, or this community of individuals that operated and announced their crimes as under the banner of Anonymous. And we were basically high on the success of that. Now, my only contribution to Operation Last Resort was to mingle with some of the guys who were allegedly responsible for this USSC.gov hack. And we felt so magnanimous in that falling out period. It was a couple of days or whatever. Eventually, the government regained control of USSC.gov, and they were able to, fix their problems. I'm sure that there was some arrests that we'd never really heard about involved in that particular crime, but it really lit a fire under us. People were really active and really excited about the next coming months because USSC.gov proved that Anonymous still had it. And so for a few months, I basically got to cut my teeth training on foreign government websites. I did a lot of SQL injections on Syria, Iran, Russia, just random governments. And because of my youth and because of my inexperience and my inability and my complete lack of understanding of computer hacking, coding, programming, anything like that, I was a very active practitioner of reverse hacking. Dude, let's get this going here. Okay, we have a bitrate reconnection here. I'm in kind of a weird spot, so. All right. So, all this is going down. What? No, only the green one. Foggers with you. So, what I got to do in the next few months from basically January until May or so was a lot of foreign government hacking. A lot of Iran, Syria. We launched Operation Syria on and on ops. We launched Operation Iran or reignited Operation Iran. And just did a lot of SQL injections. I started developing some journalist contacts. I started developing friends on and on ops. And I was using at this time the name Luminary. And what basically happened was because of my presence there and because of my just constant motivation and true belief in this cause that we had, which whatever you want to call it, because I couldn't even to this day describe that cause well for you. I got to meet a lot of people who were a lot better hackers than me, people who had botnets, people who had programming knowledge, and got to be friends with them. And so then when we came up with new operations and new ideas, which we're going to get into next, people involved me. If I had had the same presence on and on ops just months before, I probably would have been involved in Operation Last Resort, but I really wasn't. And I guess in May of 2013, I think it was May, Edward Snowden became the household name that he now is for leaking the existence of the PRISM program. And right away I jumped on this thing. It was like, oh my God, we're going to have Operation NSA and we're going to go to war with the government because they're spying on everyone, right? So I actually created the channel, Op NSA. I was later ostracized from that channel by other people from the network who really took over my operation and diverted it to be a completely different thing, which of course I'm sure was a GoIntelPro operation. But initially we had some plans. And I had friends with botnets, and so we would orchestrate distributed denial of service attacks on certain websites. It's called the DDoS attack, and shut it down. And then we also, actually we forged some information as a propaganda push. So we faked some hacks. And then we also had two individuals named Rootshell and Restless who supposedly had hacked the NSA and revealed IP addresses of something that they called DNS tunnels. I don't know what any of this shit means. I still don't know. I didn't know at the time, and I don't know now. But we released this information to various news outlets, and we told them that we were going to start hacking the NSA. Well, it's pretty fucking hard to hack the National Security Agency, so didn't go too well, but for several months we basically made a stir about what is now in retrospect nothing at all. By July of 2013, I was doxxed. Maybe August. I think it was August. I think the Twitter account might still... No, because Twitter doesn't even exist anymore, so never mind. But anyway... all this is going down. By fall of 2000... Oh, that was doxxed, so everybody figured out what my real name was, blah, blah, blah. And that was the end. I had to burn the Luminary identity. So I burned that identity. And in October of 2013, I launched a pretty successful campaign, actually. It was called Operation Throwback. And the idea was that we were just going to launch DDoS attacks against government websites. Very successful campaign. We did great work there. We shut down the websites of the NSA, the CIA. Like, it was just, we just hit these major .govs with these DDoS attacks and brought them down for short periods of time. Did some interviews for the Daily Dot and some other little cyber, tech and Softpedia, stuff like that. Nothing major. But, cyber news outlets. And this gave me a little bit of a name. By this time, I was using the name Olithium or Lithium. I think I was using the name Lithium, but the O-Lithium was put there because pastebin.com/lithium, I think, was taken, or /u/lithium. So I was able to register O-Lithium as a pastebin, which is not a real thing, but just stuck a letter on it and went with that. So we had Operation Throwback. The news articles for Operation Throwback still exist, and you can see them. You can see me using S's in the word realize, things like that, to try to thwart people from figuring out who I was again. And everything was going really well. I had 2 real-life friends. I want to tell you their names, but one of them's a former U.S. Marine, so I don't want to put him on blast like that. And there's no need to really reveal his name. Right? Fuck it, Austin Tandy and Nathan Chow. And we were working together in real life. We'd go to this Barnes & Noble in Aliso Viejo, California, and we would log into their Wi-Fi, and we would all just sit there together and orchestrate anonymous operations. And Throwback was huge at that time. Throwback was pretty much all that Anonymous had going on because it had been, destroyed by the feds. But we started realizing that we had some toolkits to do more significant operations. And in fact, the breakdown was as follows. Nathan Chow had no Twitter account, had no public presence, but he was there with us in real life. And he had Kali Linux. What's the other? There's another. It's just for hacking. It's Kali Linux, and there's another build of Linux that's just for hacking, and I can't remember what it's called anyway. But he had the tools to run these massive, what you call a dork scan, across Google. Well, all he would do would be to dig up hundreds of URLs at a time that were potentially vulnerable to SQL injections, and then Austin Tandy and I would test those vulnerabilities. We'd have hundreds of links of these sites and try to test to make sure that they were vulnerable. And if they were vulnerable, we would run a software program called SQL Map, which would allow us to perform the injection and then steal the entire database from the website. Well, not to get boring and technical with you, but back in the day, not so much anymore. I think SQL is pretty much dead, but SQL was responsible for the way that databases were constructed and structured. And an SQL injection means that you can pass unfiltered commands through to the SQL database, and it will return information that it's not necessarily supposed to tell you. So, say you have a dynamic website with drop-down menus and stuff, or you enter a password and it tells you, wrong password. Well, what's going on there is that this is not the case anymore, so no one freak out. But you pass SQL queries through to the database. Now, when the database is built properly, it will sanitize those queries, and if you try to do something like, select from where table is users or something, it will recognize that as a malicious command, and it won't return you information. Well, if it's an SQL injection vulnerable website or database, you can pass queries through that are not sanitized and get information back from the database that you're not supposed to be able to see. And when you have a vulnerability, it's really simple to test for a vulnerability in SQL. And pretty much only dead websites now are websites that are ancient and no longer maintained, but for some reason still online, will allow you to see this phenomenon. And it's actually technically illegal to do this just by itself. But if you add an apostrophe to the end of the URL or a %27, it will give you something called an SQL error, and it will say MySQL error, whatever. You can't do that. If it gives you an error like that, then it means that it's not properly sanitizing the command. So if that's the case, then there's there was a probability, and it's not necessarily the case, but there's a possibility or a probability that database is vulnerable to receiving unsanitized commands. And if that is so, then you can basically tell the database to give you all the usernames and passwords that it stores, or other information, just things you're not supposed to have. The reason I get to all this is because this is where crime really began for me. During one of our dork scans that we would run to see if we could find these vulnerable websites, we received 2 major ones. Major. It's like fucking serious business, and I was so excited about this at the time. The moment that we all started getting together in this Barnes & Noble, we realized that we didn't really care about being anonymous. We didn't want to be called anonymous. We wanted to be our own thing. So we developed this little ridiculous spin-off hackers group, very much inspired by LulzSec, called Raptor Swag. The idea was we could hack anything we wanted as long as it was big enough for news coverage. And because we had our little toolkits and our little team working in real life, too. This is pretty rare for hackers. Usually they work remotely with each other. They don't know who each other are, but we were friends in real life. We found, all of us from that team, we found 2 vulnerabilities. One of them was the United Nations, and the other was the Biomedical Engineering Department of Johns Hopkins University. And I attempted to run the United Nations United Nations injection, but it was what you call a Boolean-based blind injection, and that means that you have to brute force every single character of data that's returned to you. I'm not a hacker, guys, so I'm just going with my understanding of this stuff. So I started running the United Nations vulnerability, and yes, the website was vulnerable to the SQL injection, but it was so slow that we just gave up. We got, a couple lines of data, and we're like, oh my god, this takes for fucking ever. It's sitting there selecting each fucking letter. It was a nightmare. We gave up. Well, Johns Hopkins University wasn't that way. Johns Hopkins University was a rather straightforward and conventional SQL injection, and we were able to just dump the entire database to our computer. Specifically, my HP refurbished PC tower from Micro Center. Never forget that computer. Tell you what happened to it as we go on. So, I had the Johns Hopkins University database for 4 months or so. And what it was the entire back-end database system of the biomedical engineering department for that school. And I sat on it for months. I was actually kind of nervous and scared to release it because it was major. Everyone's heard of Johns Hopkins University. And this one would make the news, for sure. So I performed this injection. Now, when you do an SQL injection operating with a VPN turned on, a couple things can happen. It's either really slow, or periodically your VPN connection will drop, but SQL map doesn't recognize that happened, so all it tries to do is reestablish connection to the database. When it does that, if your VPN drops, there is a probability, relatively high probability, that eventually you're going to accidentally send unsanitized commands through the database from your home IP address, which is what happened to me. And for whatever reason, I had performed this injection, and in the Apache logs for that injection, they were able to see that my home IP address was performing the injection. So I sat there for 4 months or so. Nobody knows that this happens either, unless you're looking at the Apache logs, unless you're like constantly reviewing the all SQL commands, which is like no one's going to do that ever. No one knows that it's gone down. No one had any idea that we had broken into Johns Hopkins and stolen all their data until I was bored. In early 2014, Operation Throwback had pretty much fizzled out. We were all bored of DDoSing the government, and I was feeling an itch for some press attention, being a 17-year-old kid. So I emailed a professor at Johns Hopkins University. His name was Lawrence Schramm. He worked in the biomedical engineering department. And I told him that he has, 24, 48 hours or whatever to give me access to the entire internal network of the school, access to the grading system. And this was a little ploy by me to try to trick them into thinking that it was a student who had performed the hack. I told him... now, I should mention, too, that in the subject line of the email I put, hey, you're going to want to open this, and then I put his personal cell phone number, which I had yielded by performing this injection against the school's database. And obviously that was probably concerning to him to see that in his email inbox, and so he opened the email, and inside the email was a small sample of the SQL database, and I told him, here are our demands. If you don't give me the network, the grading network, if you don't give me this is whatever the demands were, we're going to leak your SQL database publicly. Well, Lawrence Schramm didn't comply. He didn't even answer. In fact, what he did was he went straight to the FBI. And I couldn't believe... Stand by. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what the fuck? This guy's not responding. I called him with a what they call a VoIP. It's voice over IP number. It's basically a burner online cell phone. I'd called him with a VoIP, and I'd left him all these threatening voicemails about how we're going to leak your database, blah, 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 give us your grading network, blah, blah. And I used a British accent. I said, all right, we've got your SQL database and that. If you don't give me access to that, it's just mank, just fake accent. Never responded to any of those. And I was going, what the fuck is going on here, man? This guy, Lawrence Schramm, he's not biting. Did he see my email? Did he get my calls? Blah, blah, blah. Well, Anonymous had given him his demands, so he didn't comply. I leaked the database online. Stolen. I think the release is still online, but the download link is removed. I think the FBI made me take it down. Can't remember for sure. But anyway, I put this database online with a press release called Fuck JHU, Johns Hopkins University. And it's a fucking crazy... I'll read you guys... Let's read it together, because it's fun to, provide receipts and talk about things with you. Fuck JHU. I think it might be on... Let's see. Probably on here. Here we go. Let's read this insane rambling together, because this is where you find out what a lunatic I was back then. I'll actually give you the window share so we can look at it together and see my nice little neat ASCII art that we did here with the little anonymous face. Then we'll scroll up to show you the date, March 5th, 2014. Here's what it says. Download Johns Hopkins University data. I hope to God that this no longer exists. Let me make sure of that. I think that the FBI had me take it down. If not, I need to be quite careful. Yeah, the file you were trying to download is no longer available. Okay, so cool. So I don't have to worry about accidentally breaking the CFAA here. You can see the views, 7,000 views on the pastebin. Sup, fags. Anonymous here. Oops. Doing nothing but being complete dicks and trolling hundreds of innocent people. You see, recently we hacked into the secure databases of Johns Hopkins University and acquired roughly 103 megabytes of raw text data detailing the layout and content of their SQL infrastructure. Normally, this information probably wouldn't be released, but as we're about to explain, Johns Hopkins University deserves it. Now, again, I don't agree with any of this shit anymore, okay? We sent a series of emails to the personal email accounts of staff working at the university, including their personal telephone numbers in the subject line, in the hopes that they would be tempted to read what was inside. In these emails, we essentially told them to give us access to their computer network or else we would leak their SQL databases to the masses. In reality, we had no intention to extort such access out of this university. We were merely trying to scare the shit out of them. In these... Oh, and I'll tell you why... Okay. Yeah. In these emails, the staff at Johns Hopkins University was given 24 hours to comply with our false demands or consequences would never be the same. That's an old internet meme. And since none of these fucktards took a moment out of their day to respond to Anonymous, we decided we should fuck them. In this release, you will find the personal details, phone numbers, names, email addresses, occupations of dozens of staff members of the biomedical engineering branch of Johns Hopkins University. You will also find further down in the release the same details on hundreds of students at the university whose only crime was putting their trust in a system which left their information open to a simple vulnerability. And this is not true. They're not in Ivy League school, but I was just retarded because I was a kid. Left their databases... I hate saying this because it's not true. Yes, an Ivy League school left their databases open to literally one of the most simple web application vulnerabilities you can find. If that isn't reason enough to smack the shit out of them, we don't know what is. Perhaps next time, such institutions will think twice before resorting to total retardery when constructing their websites. For those of you who think this is harsh and uncalled for, we say good. Anonymous doesn't fuck around. We gave you our demands, JHU. You didn't reply, and now you're being taught a lesson. In addition, when we told the staff members of JHU that we had all their data and all their base, another meme, we explained that this would be entirely their fault if they did not comply. So you want someone to blame for what has happened here? Blame it on Lawrence Schramm. His phone number is blah blah. I don't think that's illegal. Hopefully not. I forgot that was there. So there's no mens rea. There's no intention to commit a crime. Sorry, guys. We are anonymous. We are Legion. Blah 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 blah. Okay. So mostly silence. Let's remove that here. Just delete that. There we go. All right. Mostly silence unfolded, and at this time in early 2014, I had started hanging out with my friends, smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol, going out at night, blah blah blah. I will always remember this one moment. I was really stoned. I had only started smoking weed like 3 months before, and mucho paranoia, weed paranoia. I came home. It was probably like 10, 11 o'clock at night, something like that. And I came home, I checked my anonymous Twitter account, which at the time was like Hooky or The Hooky. It was definitely Hooky, I'll never forget that. I'll tell you why. And I had a direct message from... it wasn't your Anon News. It was Anani Press. Anani Press was a huge... Hello. A huge Twitter account for Anonymous at that time. And I got this direct message from Anani Press, and it said, "You tried to extort a hospital?" I was thinking, what the fuck? And there was a news article, and the news article was MSNBC. Clicked the news article, and there was an official statement from Dennis O'Shea, who is the university spokesman of the... I make this one for you. Dennis O'Shea was the university spokesperson for Johns Hopkins University. Let me see if this news article still exists. It might. Let's go Dennis O'Shea, Anonymous, Johns Hopkins. Yeah, here you go. Alright, so this is CBS fucking news, guys. And you're about to understand why I was so fucking paranoid right now. About to get a real glimpse. Whoops. I'm going to do a web capture so you guys can see everything going down. There it is. March 7th, 2014, CBS Baltimore. Johns Hopkins data spilled in extortion attempt. Johns Hopkins University is hit by a hacker. The university and the FBI are investigating a data breach involving hundreds of staff and students. Pat Warren reports on what was stolen. The database was compromised late last year, but Hopkins says much of the information stolen was already available on its public website. That's true, but a lot of it wasn't. Johns Hopkins University joins the list of targets in the theft of information. I've never felt concerned about it, but maybe I should be now. I didn't really think about it in the past, but it's definitely something to consider, student Phoebe Morgan said. The Hopkins data breach involves data stolen by a hacker who claims to be a member of the hackers group Anonymous. A spokesman says the hacker threatened to post the data unless the university provided user ID and password credentials to access the university network. The data involved the university's biomedical engineering department. Let's make sure this is still caught up. We alerted the FBI right away, and and yesterday the FBI got back to us and said they found the data was on the internet, said Dennis O'Shea, JHU Office of Communications. And there's a quote by a student. While a breach at the University of Maryland saw thousands of birth dates and SSN numbers were stolen, Hopkins reports its data was more public. Right now, no credit cards were involved, no social security numbers, no birthdays, nothing that could really enable anyone to commit identity theft. Thank God this saved my ass, by the way. I had no idea whether or not this was there. Research universities like JHU get attacks like this many times a day because of the nature of the information we have and the nature of our infrastructure, said O'Shea, so it's important for us to always be on guard. Around 850 current and former students were included in the breach. Those former students are being contacted as well. The students were involved in problem-solving classes between 2006 and 2013. Alright, so basically the reason I fucking flipped my shit and was really, really paranoid in this exact moment was because the FBI was now involved. Give you guys a little tidbit of information here. When the FBI publicly announces that they're investigating something, it's almost certain that they're going to get you. So, I freaked out. My stomach, boom, oh fuck. And I don't know what I was expecting was going to happen, but this was the biggest news thing that I had really ever been involved in my life. And I called my friend Trent, who was with us that night, and I said, dude, come outside, come back outside right now, I'm going to get raided by the FBI. And he's like, what the fuck? And we sat by the pool, and I told him everything that had happened. And there's a little, a concrete little brick wall that's near the community pool of my old neighborhood. And we were sitting there talking about everything, and I was just so afraid, because I knew that they were coming. Well, in the months prior, involved in cybercrime and stuff. To where? No, I'm on the show. Okay, I love you. Okay. What? You can hear you in the headphones. So, at this point, what? I don't know. I winging it. Oh, yeah. If you want. There's my wife. I love you, Rihanna. Okay. So. Okay, I told you I love you on the stream. So. I had a friend from the months prior, my involvement in Anonymous, named Jennifer Emick. And Jennifer Emick basically rose to fame by identifying a hacker named Sabu Hector Monsegur and selling his information to the FBI. And as a result of that particular little achievement of hers, she formed a group called Backtrace Security, and Backtrace Security's entire purpose was to identify computer hackers and cyber criminals and then sell their information to the government. And she was basically what you would call a consultant for federal agencies and federal investigators. And we were good friends, but she didn't know what I was involved in this whole time, that we knew each other. I was living this online double life thing. So I went to her, and I said, hey, I did something crazy. I need you to find out if I'm in trouble. She said, what did you do? I said, I can't tell you, but it's bad. I need you to talk to your connections and find out what's going down. So she goes to the FBI, and that night, I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning to a call from her, and she said, all right, I have good news and I have bad news. What do you want first? I said, bad news. Duh. She said, well, the bad news is the FBI knows who you are and they're coming for you. And the good news is, if you give them your computer and comply with their investigation, you probably won't get in a lot of trouble because there's no identity theft and you're still a minor. Right after this, I basically agreed. I said, okay, put me in contact. Because they were going to come regardless, somehow. And they put me in contact with the Baltimore field office of the FBI. I would get these calls on my phone and be like 000000000, whatever. That's the caller ID. And I remember the first time I picked it up, and I was talking to an agent out of Baltimore. He said, okay, so I guess that you're the offender for this Baltimore hack, or for this Johns Hopkins hack. But there's something that I need to ask you before we can move forward. I said, okay, what is it? He said, I have to ask you some information that was never made public so that I can confirm that you're the offender. And, okay, because obviously I was the offender. And he said, what was the name of the person who emailed the professor? I said, Hookie, because he's the bassist from Joy Division. And he said, okay, good, let's move forward. And that was, of course, the right answer. And we were talking, and the initial plan was that they were going to fly agents from Baltimore, Maryland, all the way to Aliso Viejo, California, to come and seize my computer. Probably expensive, so instead they outsourced that task to the Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory of the Orange County FBI Field Office, and specifically an agent named Todd Munoz. Really cool guy, by the way. I still talk highly of him to this day. I had nothing but good experiences with Todd Munoz, and he's retired now, and I hope that he's living a really happy and a good life of substance, because he was a really, really professional agent, super calm, super level-headed, really rational, really reasonable guy, and just very nice to me. But I lied to him a lot, and it is, in fact, a federal crime to lie to the FBI. Now, fortunately, I haven't talked to him for so long that, again, this is all statute of limitations. Doesn't matter. I can say whatever I want. But he came with a partner in April of 2014, and the night before they arrived, I'd gone to, I'd gotten home, I knocked on my grandma's bedroom door, and I literally procrastinated telling her. I didn't want to tell her for a long time. It was like a month later. I didn't want to tell her what was going on. But I knocked on her door and I said, hey, I have something to tell you. The FBI is going to be here tomorrow. But it's only because I've been helping them. And she said, fucking what? I said, yeah, there's some computer hacking stuff that's going on. I'm kind of helping out the FBI, but they're going to be here tomorrow. So I just want to let you know. And she was like, oh my God. So the next morning I woke up and the house smelled really good. Candles had been lit. Everything was clean, really nice, pristine there. And I was in talks with Tom Munoz that morning. Called from his 000000000 number that he does. And we were talking. It's kind of hard to get into my neighborhood. It's hard to find the house. So I was on the phone with him, and I walked him in, and so here's park here, and then I'll come outside and see if we can find you. And I see these two guys come walking up the sidewalk in suits. And they got to the front door, and my grandma said, okay, so I can let you guys in and we can talk, but the first thing is I just need to see some identification. So they pulled out badges and everything, the FBI, and we all sat around the dining room table together. They said, start at the beginning, tell me everything that happened in Anonymous. And I lied to them. I told them that I was involved in Operation Syria, Operation Iran, all these things that were not illegal in the United States, because it's not illegal to hack Iran, really. As long as the servers are not located in the U.S., you can't get in any trouble, because there's obviously jurisdictional issues with Iran prosecuting an American. It doesn't happen. But I told them all that. I was very selective about what information I told the FBI. I had the computer on the table. I said, this is the computer, blah, blah. And they gave me this receipt. It's Department of Justice receipt for seized property, or receipt for property. And it has the serial number of the computer and blah, blah, blah. And we just talked. And the creepiest thing about all of it was, as we were sitting at this table, they knew the names of all of my friends from Anonymous. They knew who Warfist Prime was. They knew who Austin Tandy and Nathan Chan. And Austin Tandy got in the Marine Corps later, so it's a trip to me. But they knew these guys' names. They knew everything already, pretty much. And things were quiet. They said, okay, we're not going to arrest you. We're not going to charge you, but we're going to go through the computer, and as long as there's nothing fucking crazy on it, we're not going to arrest you. And so what they didn't know is I debanned that computer at that time. It's called Darren's Bootin' Nuke, and basically what it does is just fucking wipe everything from the hard drive and replace that information with junk data. I did what's called a 32-pass Gutman sweep, or Gutman wipe of that hard drive, so it's impossible to ever recover anything from that computer again. And there was nothing in it. So now when you delete a file on your computer, usually what ends up happening is that space on the hard drive is left open. So like, say you delete a file and it doesn't rewrite any information there, it just removes whatever was there. And usually it's temporary and can be recovered, but it puts like blank space in that spot. Well, when you do a deban on the computer, it actually fills that space on the hard drive with junk data. So it's like random letters and numbers and stuff, which is a much more secure way to delete stuff. And it, with a 32-pass Gutman wipe, which is used by the United States government and intelligence agencies, it actually does that 32 times. So every single piece of memory on that computer is rewritten with junk data 32 times over. There's no way that you're ever going to get anything off this computer. And I dodged a bullet. The FBI was really, really fair with me. For someone who complained about the government a lot for years after this, I was treated very nicely and very fairly by the government. They could have charged me with the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. They could have given me 10 years. If they wanted to, and they didn't charge me, and they were really, really cool. And I only really understood that as I got older and wiser. But for a long time, I was just mad at the government and probably just at the world. So for the next 2 years, I was in contact with Todd Munoz periodically. But it was that specific event with Johns Hopkins where I made this sort of vow to myself that I was never going to commit criminal activity again unless I was going to make some money doing it. I was never going to do it for press attention. I wasn't the kind of fame-seeking criminal anymore. Now I was going to be a profiteering criminal. And this is how everything really started. To put it frankly for you guys, I saw Breaking Bad, and I've always been really interested in science. Always been really interested in, just those kinds of things, like, for example, manufacturing methamphetamine, or the adjacent concepts, And in mid-2014, going from mid into the fall of 2014, I decided that I was going to manufacture crystal meth. Never done the drug in my life, but I saw it on Breaking Bad, and it looked pretty cool on there, and that was my plan. So I had a co-worker named Casper Calvin, and he was a meth addict, and I was smoking weed, drinking, stuff like that, taking like pills here and there or whatever, but I've never done meth. And so we got to be really good friends, and he filled my head with all these stories about how he could sell drugs if I made them. So I started studying. Now, I'm going to show you exactly where I got a lot of this information. The Hive Archives. Arrowwood. Alright. So basically there's this website right here don't think it works this way. I think you have to do it another way. Let's see what happens. Oh, it actually does work, huh? Okay. Used to be broken, a lot of broken links, but... This website, right here, and there's also other write-ups that we're going to dive into, I guess, if you guys want to know. This website right here basically teaches you how to make meth. And not only this one, but, let's see, Arrowhead Archives, Rhodium Chemistry and Pharmacology, Chemistry Archive, alright, here you go. Reductive amminations, methamphetamine, birch reductions, P2P, ephedrine-related, hydroiodic acid, and red phosphorus reduction of ephedrine, this type of thing, information about impurities and things like that. But this is the website, this arrowhead.org really is where I learned how to make meth. And I studied for a long time. I studied for about 8 months. Just reading religiously and obsessively. And I started gathering the materials that the website told me I needed to make the drug. And weird things would happen because I'm guessing maybe my home network was being watched. That's, looking back now, these years later, I suspect that this is exactly why this happened. But the FBI, every time I would start gathering my materials, like hoarding matchbooks and stealing little bottles of iodine and buying pseudoephedrine and things like that. And I didn't often buy pseudoephedrine with my own ID. My friends would do it for me. And I had like a few people that I would... Basically, I had every courtesy clerk at the grocery store where I work like mixed in on my bullshit because I was always telling them like these grandiose claims about how we're going to do this and that. They would buy pseudoephedrine for me. And every time I would start hoarding these materials and start preparing, the FBI would call Tom Munoz, and he would say, "Oh, have you seen anything going on?" And I would always be like, "No, not a damn thing going on. Actually, everything's, I'm really not involved in that anymore." And I go, "Yeah, I'm not really mixed up with Anonymous." He's like, "Yeah, not so much Anonymous, but like anything. You seen anything? Know anything?" I was like, "No, pretty much not, dude. I'm just kind of like making songs and I just tell him that." But obviously, I'm sure he knew differently. And the FBI was watching me for a little bit. Basically, I would think from 2014 until the day they returned my computer, which would have been, I guess, April of 2016, exactly 2 years later, the FBI was surveilling me pretty heavily. They knew what I was up to, and they were watching. But they never arrested or charged me again. Or never arrested or charged me. That actually came down to state law enforcement as we get to that part of the story later on. But I was hoarding the materials and just learning, just trying to figure out how it all goes down, how to make meth. And a lot of that learning period was really boring. And not much was going on, but I was so committed, like I'd had a taste of the rush that comes from committing criminal activity in Anonymous, and it's very addictive, you guys. It's an addiction that eventually I was relieved of for the most part. I still liked to every now and then I like to do for years after that I like to do like little things, nothing serious though, nothing that was going to get me in major trouble. But the addiction to crime was huge, and it was driving and pulling me like a compulsion towards these activities. And in 2015, specifically April 2015, I think right around 420, not positive exactly, but right around mid to late April of 2015, I had been hoarding supplies. I've been preparing my chemicals and everything and figuring out how things work and learning how to prepare them. And I could teach you guys, like I could sit here and teach you how to make meth, but I'm not going to, because that's probably not a good idea, just because I don't want anyone to do this. But, it's a lot of preparation. There's weeks of gathering things and extracting things and purifying things to get things, from the shelf at Stater Brothers to, a reagent like to get it from a matchbox at Stater Brothers to reactable clean red phosphorus, it takes a lot of steps that you have to do. And just to give you, it's basically a solvent extraction of the matchbook striker material, and then a further purification of that material using strong concentrated acids. Sulfuric is really a good way, and hydrochloric is a really good way. But sulfuric is better than hydrochloric. But you pretty much have to do both. Being a nerd, I like to rant about these things, but I don't want to like give away too much information. But pretty much, it's a submersion of these little striker. It's a little strip that you get, and you get a matchbook, and you like that. Well, the striker strip part, you cut that off. It gets soaked in acetone, ethanol, whatever, and then all the RP, and you put some quarters in there. Take it and you like this, and the quarters will agitate those striker strips, and all the red phosphorus falls off of them. You take a sink strainer, not a coffee filter. I learned this the fucking hard way. I don't want to get into too much detail. Take a string strainer, run it through, and then you can pull the little cardboard strips out, and what happens is you have all this acetone or ethanol with all this powder in the bottom of it. RP doesn't really dissolve in anything, so you pretty much have a solvent in your RP. You strip the solvent layer, wash it a couple more times in acetone to remove any glue or whatever, boil it in acetone, and then that powder material still contains a lot of little bits of paper and a lot of little bits of like glass and other things that they put on there to get it to like that with friction. And you basically he's not you pretty much soak the red phosphorus in a strong acid like sulfuric acid, and it will destroy the paper and it will destroy the glass. Selectively reduces it to carbon, and then that carbon reduces to carbon dioxide and it emits, right? And so you end up with a pretty clean red phosphorus, and then you wash that red phosphorus with water, and then prime it with hydrochloric acid or muriatic acid, and then this RP will iodine. So anyway, it takes a lot of work to get these matchbooks to be red phosphorus, and it takes a lot of work to get this iodine tincture to be precipitated iodine crystals. And don't get me started on the fucking pseudoephedrine, because that is a nightmare and a half. Anyway, a lot of times going into this, I got a call in April of 2015 from Calvin, and he said, "Hey man, are you ready? Like, his girlfriend at the time, I think they're still together, his girlfriend needed meth, so he's like, hey, let's cook like now." No, okay. So I had everything ready to go, but I'd never actually performed the reaction. Got over to his garage, doing all this, and I think let's wind down this episode after my first reaction here, because this is a real turning point for me. And this is a good part of the story. Like this had a huge impact on me. I was 18, or almost 18. Here's 2015, so it would have been, yeah, I think I was almost 18, or maybe, I don't fucking know what year I was born. No, I was almost 19. I was 18 at this time. All right. We get over to the garage, and Calvin's parents, his mom and his stepdad, both knew that he smoked marijuana, and he hung out with his friends that smoked marijuana. So he's a little older than me. This must have been in his early 20s, probably 22, something like that. He went to his mom, and he told her, "Hey, my friends and I are going to have like a big smoke session of marijuana in the garage tomorrow, so can you just let us like hang out there?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever, we don't care." So that kept away the parents. We got into this garage, and I had bought some laboratory glassware. I wasn't going to do this in a soda bottle like fucking people do on, you hear about people doing shake and bake reactions. I'm not that kind of, I buy glassware. So I bought a 1,000 milliliter Florence boiling flask on UnitedNuclear.com, and I bought a 200 millimeter gram condenser, which you actually don't use for a reflux, but I didn't know any better, and it does technically work. I bought a gram condenser, a round bottom flask, a hot plate, and Just some other little materials here. And a lot of mason jars I was using back then, which as I got better at this stuff, I stopped using mason jars and generally used other things. But we set all the gear up and everything. And it was very ritualistic because I'd never seen something like this before in my fucking life. Like, I'd never conducted a fucking reductive or, a reduction with hydroiodic acid in a round bottom flask of pseudoephedrine. So we'd set up beach chairs. We're watching this thing like it's a movie theater, and it's got this big wooden table thing, hot plate on there, round bottom flask, and a condenser. We're all sitting on these beach chairs and just watching this thing, and I was just so mesmerized. Like, this was basically the fucking coolest thing I'd ever done. I was 19, 18 years old, whatever, and I was fucking cooking meth. And it was a pretty small reduction. It's like 5 grams of pseudo, so it was a couple boxes, whatever. Which had been extracted with a chlorinated solvent and worked up. But I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, set the gear up, doing all this, and we were really transfixed. But I added a little too much water to the reaction, and what ends up happening is if you add too much water, it's harder to get the reagents to fire. You really want to have a mostly dry reaction environment, except for a little bit of distilled water. Just a little bit of distilled water, and then it'll fire off. But I didn't know that, so I added too much water. So this reduction is taking like a lot longer. It's called a long wet. We're sitting there for hours and hours and stuff, and they're in the beach chairs next to me, and I'm kind of like doing my thing, like going over here, like doing fucking, getting everything so. Doing a little, I gotta get my fucking, you know how it is, chemistry. You're always, it's like fidgeting with all your gear. And they're sitting in these beach chairs next to me, and they have a bong for marijuana, and maybe a joint or a blunt or something. And Calvin goes, "Hey, dude, if we light this joint, are we gonna blow up?" And I'm pretty sure we had already been smoking weed that night. But I was like, I don't think so. I think you're going to be okay. And I didn't really know. But I was banking on that we weren't going to blow up. And so I used to join up. We're alive? Okay. And we're smoking weed and watching this reduction happen. And you're doing this on heat on a hot plate. And it's, it's called a reflux. And basically the way that a reflux works, I'll give you a little example, I guess. Let's say this is your round bottom flask. And on top of your round bottom flask is a condenser. Now, a condenser's open on the top here, but the Perrier bottle's not. So, is that Perrier? Who's that? Yeah, it's Perrier, right? All right, so condenser's hooked up like this on the top. And the idea is cold water is run through a jacket port. It's basically a jacket in and a jacket out. There are little ports on the side of the condenser, here and here. And inside is an inside tube, which in the case of a gram condenser is coiled. But you're actually supposed to use an Align or a Liebig condenser for a reflux. I just didn't know because I was too young. It both work, but really it's a lot safer and better to not use a gram condenser. And on the inside is a tube that connects to the reaction vessel, which is a round bottom or a Florence flask in this case. But the outside of that's what's called a jacket, and it's disconnected from that tube. So you have a tube running like this, and then on the outside it's like this jacket. And this jacket fills with cold water. Now, with cold water running through the jacket from bottom to top, technically, right? You could do it the other way, but you're supposed to go bottom to top. That's what I did. I knew to run the reflux condensers water flow from the bottom port to the top port. You basically hook up 2 water hoses, and it's filled with cold water, running cold water. Now, in the bottom here, you have red phosphorus, iodine, and pseudoephedrine, and water. And this is basically brought to a boil. And the temperature... am I telling too much information? The temperature here is slightly over the boiling point of water, but basically, this is boiling down here, and as it's boiling, the fumes are traveling up this round bottom into this condenser, and then they're condensing because there's cold water on the outside and the jacket layer right here, and that condenses, and then it drips down back into the reaction vessel. So what happens is, as your alcohol is reducing to the secondary amine, methamphetamine, or actually as it's going from the precursor, which is alcohol, pseudoephedrine, it's converting to an intermediate called iodoephedrine, and then that intermediate is cycled over to methamphetamine, and that happens because there's a reduction of the hydroxyl group of the molecule, so it slices off that hydroxyl group, which is oxygen and hydrogen, or an oxygen atom, I guess. It's called a reduction. You can have an oxidation or a reduction. In the case of pseudoephedrine to methamphetamine, it's a reduction because you're cutting an oxygen atom off of the molecule and changing its oxidation state. And that converts the decongestant pseudoephedrine found in cold medication to the secondary amine that is banned by every government in the world except Afghanistan, I think, and North Korea or something. Anyway, so this reaction's happening, and the fumes from this, which include your goodies, which are converted to a vapor at this point, are recycling in the condenser, and the hydrogen iodide, or HI, that's created from the reaction between red phosphorus and iodine is also recycling in the condenser. The ideal recycling position is approximately 25% of the height of the condenser. So the HI, that cool sound, the HI is like recycling, like right here, and all of the reaction fumes are basically dripping from the condenser back down into the reaction, and this allows you to maintain the contents of the reaction vessel. So reaction took a long time. We were probably in there for like 6 or 7 hours, something, maybe even more, I'm not sure. By the end of it, they were getting kind of sleepy because they were coming off meth, and he was saying, hey man, how long is this going to fucking take, you know? So we'll go have a cigarette around the back, we'll leave the reaction unattended, which probably not smart, but worked out okay. We go around the back of the garages and we're smoking cigarettes. And it's like, hey, what's up, Blake? Why is this taking so long? I said I added a little too much water. I kind of fucked up, but it's okay. We're still getting a reduction. It's just gonna take longer. And we got back in there. Finally, at this point, reduction is done. Technically, there's something called TLC. What? Come on, fucktard. Let's go, dick. Sorry, my program is being retarded. Okay. You can tell when the reduction's done with a process called TLC, or top layer chromatography, but I didn't have that or know that that existed at the time. So the way that I judged engaged the progress of my reaction was by the visible emission of hydrogen. You can actually see hydrogen emissions because they're really, really small bubbles. So when those small bubbles stop evolving from the reaction mixture, and instead you're left only with, you know, what looks like boiling water and what we call a homogeneous reaction mixture, you know that the reduction's done because the reduction is no longer emitting hydrogen. And that happened, got to that point, and you're left with this homogeneous reaction fluid, and at the bottom of the reaction vessel is all your red phosphorus. Iodine's been consumed, and the pseudoephedrine has been converted to methamphetamine, specifically methamphetamine hydrogen iodide. When that moment comes, the reaction vessel is quenched with a large volume of distilled water, and then this shuts the reaction down, and then sodium hydroxide is added to that reaction vessel, or otherwise that reaction mixture is transferred to a new vessel, and then to that is added toluene or ether, and both of those are solvents, and then sodium hydroxide is added to the reaction mixture. It converts the methamphetamine hydrogen iodide to free-base methamphetamine, which elutes into the solvent layer because it's soluble in toluene, ether, so forth. I was using toluene at this time that I had extracted from some solvents. I think it was a gun cleaner or something. Anyway, I had some toluene in there, and you get what's called phase separation. So it's water or the aqueous layer, the aqueous phase, and then on top of that is ether or toluene, like this, and there you can see them. You can see the layer separation. And after the free base amine elutes into that solvent phase, you separate the solvent phase, so toluene, like this is taken, and then that's what's called water wash, because sodium ions from the sodium hydroxide will bind to like everything in the world, I guess. I don't know, but there's fucking sodium in there, hydroxide, and you wash that solvent with distilled water, and then this pulls out residual sodium hydroxide. Then you're left with a cleaner solvent phase, separated, no longer an aqueous layer on the bottom of it, and then that gets dried with a drying agent such as calcium chloride, silicon dioxide, aluminosilicates, things like this. At this time, my drying agent was calcium chloride. But anyway, dry the solvent. Then again, the solvent is stripped from its drying agent and added to a new vessel. There are a couple ways to produce hydrogen chloride. But at this time, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I generated my hydrogen chloride by throwing aluminum foil into muriatic acid. Now, technically, the primary reaction product is hydrogen there. But it also does produce hydrogen chloride gas. Pass this over a drying agent and then into the solvent phase. So we're getting ready here, and we had a gas can. And this is why I know that aluminum foil and muriatic acid does technically produce hydrogen chloride. Now, people online will claim that's not true, but those people have never tried. That's not really the way that you want to produce hydrogen chloride. The way you want to produce hydrogen chloride is sulfuric acid and table salt, but I didn't know. So we took a gas can and we filled it up with muriatic acid. Not too much. But a good amount of muriatic acid, and then throw some aluminum foil in that, and then you have this line coming out of the gas can and going into the drying vessel, and then from the drying vessel into and then the drying vessel just takes water vapor out of the gas, so the calcium chloride adsorbs water molecules, and then that drier hydrogen chloride gas passes out of that vessel and then into that solvent phase. And this for me was the moment of truth. Here we go. We're going to find out. Have I been reading for 8 months a bunch of bullshit, or have I done this? So I had this vessel with toluene. Calvin and I are sitting there. All right, let's do it. Throw an aluminum foil in there. And this vigorous reaction commences, and this white gas is produced. And we had it must have been a mason jar at this time, I guess. I think it was a mason jar. This mason jar. And we hit it with that gas. And right away, like a snow globe, this seemingly clear solvent just goes, and methamphetamine starts falling out of the toluene. We looked at each other like this. Holy shit. And that was the first time that I ever got to precipitate a hydrochloride salt. And I was hooked. On that activity, and I'm seeing that snow globe was like, I'm gonna fucking do this forever. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was the moment that vessel precipitated that white crystalline solid, and it's white because it's dirty. You still have to clean it up after that. But the moment that happened, it was like everything I've been reading worked. So I cleaned up the precipitate, got it back to him, I think the next day or something, and that was the beginning of everything for me, because I was 18 and I had just made meth, and it would be a long journey from there. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but you actually in California can't make any money making meth because it's so expensive and time consuming, and you can't compete with the Mexican cartels who sell meth for like $5 a gram. My production cost, even as I got to be a better clandestine chemist and I was still doing these things and learning and getting better at my craft, my production cost was about $100 to $120 per gram of meth. So you obviously can't sell that and compete with the people who are selling it for $5 a gram because they're doing it in bulk with phenylacetone. But I didn't know that yet, and that night I became a drug manufacturer for the first time, and man, where do I I'm trying to think. I think we can close out right now, and we'll do episode 2, and we'll talk about sort of how everything developed, because I went from this kid who saw that thing on TV and then got to do it, to a drug dealer, and it would turn out that meth wasn't really my business. It was something that I got hooked on later, but at the time I'd never used it, so didn't really know anything about its market dynamics or anything like that. But yeah, some things happen. We'll talk about it at the start of the next episode that were catalytic. But I was just shooting in the dark and going along as I went, and it was a weird thing, man, becoming like a stoner who had made like hash oil extracts before to like now I've like cooked meth was like really a big thing, and it really transformed what I felt my identity was, you know. Something happens the first time you cook meth, and it takes a long time to let go of what happens from that. And now I'm like, I've been through the ringer, so it's a fun story and everything, but I don't identify with that anymore. I've even the other day I was at a meeting, and my friend who was at the meeting with us shared that when he was 18 years old he got arrested for manufacturing meth, which didn't happen to me till I was 21. And I really knew my progress because I didn't tell him that I was too. He doesn't know me well enough, really, whatever. Someone else told him for me, which I kind of thought might happen. But I specifically didn't tell him because I'd always, for years after that, everybody that I knew, I was like, man, I fucking was meth manufacturer. And this time I didn't do that. And so the purpose of this story, as we're going to go on and talk Cape Pioneers, is one, to prepare me for the composition of my book, which I'm 50-something pages into, but also to carry you guys a message of what the fuck I think about a life of crime. That day in 2015, I went from the little stoner kid with dreams of being a drug kingpin to an actual meth cook. And it wasn't great quality. It wasn't I was never Walter White or anything like that, of course, but I thought I was at that time. So it gave me a glimpse into a world that was gonna almost kill me a lot of times. And anyway, great point to stop because I know exactly where we're going to pick up on episode 2. So anyway, don't cut up matchbooks, and remember to subscribe to Black Box Online.